Hello, ladies and gentlemen. And today I present to you a living legend, a king representing the state of Florida. His name is Mark Shapiro. He is a real estate veteran with a vast experience in acquiring and managing thousands of units and dozens of properties over his career. He knows what it's like to start small and scale his net worth into millions. He also knows what it's like to recover from serious personal challenges and crippling financial setbacks. When you learn his real life story, you'll be empowered to know that anyone can succeed if they just have the right system and mentor. At this stage in his life, he wants to give back. It is his passion to help beginning real estate investors break into real estate game in a big way, even starting with no money and no experience. Finally, with Mark as your guide, financial freedom for you is a realistic possibility. Just follow his simple yet revolutionary 8-step Protege Partnership System. Over the years, his approach to real estate has evolved from acquiring single assets to owning and managing thousands of units. While the scale of operations has expanded, the core activities of finding, analyzing, and financing properties have remained constant. He emphasizes the importance of straightforward transactions and the right fit for each investment, simplifying the process to maximize profitability. You can get access to him through his school course or Instagram, which is at the Mark Shapiro. Ladies and gentlemen, please give it up for Mr. Shapiro. Mr. Shapiro, how are you feeling today?
Thank you, Vincent. Thank you so much. That's quite an introduction. Did my mother write that introduction?
Possibly.
Possibly. Is there a glare? Can you see fine?
Yeah, I can see fine. I can hear you perfectly, which is good.
Super. I want to tell you, I want to thank you so much because you motivate me and the stuff that you do touches me. And this is a very important podcast. I do lots of them, but this one may be the most important one that I think I've ever done.
Wow, that truly means a lot, Mr. Shapiro. It truly does. Thank you so much. Yeah, you're the man, literally. And then, can I ask you some rapid fire questions before I get into my real questions?
Rapid fire.
Let's go. What year did you get into real estate?
1983.
1983. Did the dot-com affect you much at all, or was it more the 07, 09 recession?
Did the dot-com affect me or the there was a bunch of setbacks in between 83. There was a setback in the late 80s. There was also the FDIC where the banks failed. There was the S&L crisis. So all those became opportunities for me, just like the great financial crisis. So, and we're heading into another one if we get this new amazing tax plan that will tax you. What is the tax plan? 45% of the equity in your home we're going to get taxed on?
Yeah, unrealized gains, supposedly that's being
I really hope it doesn't happen. It's insane.
Yeah, same here, Mr. Shapiro. Same here. Hopefully it doesn't. Do you know how many doors you have in your portfolio at the moment?
Quite a few. A little less than 10,000.
Wow. All right. Look at that, ladies and gentlemen. I'm telling you, he's done his 10,000 hours. How many times do you underwrite a deal? Is it the same for just 20 doors or 100 plus? Or is each, if the more it goes up, the more times eyeballs have to look at it?
Yes and no. So I still underwrite my deals on the back of a napkin. It's very easy for me to look at a deal and tell you what it's going to run, whether it's we don't do C plus, we do B and better assets in the multifamily space. And, they typically have an inherent expense ratio that they run off of. And depending on the market, what they are from a vacancy standpoint and a loss to lease and a loss to credit. So you really understand how deals work after you've done them. And I always tell people there's no difference from buying one unit to buying 1,000 units. You go through the same process, step by step by step. And if you follow a simple step-by-step process, you're going to succeed. And if you waver, you're going to fail.
Fair enough. Is assuming loans a better strategy in 2024, or a majority of your deals syndicated with new financing in 2024?
So the last few deals that we've done was with new debt. But we are looking at some of these new deals that have assumable debt on them. It is a bigger equity check, but we're looking at those. We're seeing a lot of carnage right now. We're seeing a lot of deals that are being taken back, especially in the state of Texas. We're seeing some here in the state of Florida. But a lot of these nouveau syndicators, I'll call them the social media syndicators, that got into the business in the last decade and a half, they did a lot of deals with bridge debt. And when rates started to bump up and you saw 400 bips on rates, so if that 100 bips is 1%. Okay. So if it went up 400 bips, then they saw 4 point. And when the property, if you have to go refinance it, you're not going to be able to refinance it for the same value. The value's gone down. So they don't have the money to write an equity check. So they lose the deal. The lenders are taking it back and they're throwing them back out into the marketplace. And there are a lot of those deals out there.
So there's opportunity to arbitrage and actually find some good deals. You just have to do your due diligence.
Yes.
And every time you buy a building, do you create a new LLC for it, or do you put them all under one parent company?
No, always create a single purpose entity, an SPE. Always. One for one.
That's a hidden gem right there, ladies and gentlemen, from the master himself. And how do you pick your certified property manager? Is it a must for them to be on-site living at the building, or do you accept that as an optional option for your CPM?
So that's really great that you actually know what a CPM is, okay? Because most property managers are not CPMs. And people are like, is that a CPA? I'm like, no, it's a CPM. But they do they go through the same arduous process that an attorney goes through to get their law degree. It's 3 years, 3 years of studying, and it requires a tremendous amount of continuing education. And a lot of property management firms don't even have their own in-house CPMs. We used to have two when we had our office in Greenville. Our property management firm was in Greenville. And they will help you to avoid a lot of the peaks and valleys. They will help you with your set of policies and procedures, and they will keep you current on all laws relative to resident occupied units that you want to always be constantly, because they're constantly evolving. And whatever state you operate in, you need to follow those laws to the T. You need to make sure that you manage your assets to the T, because that's where you lose money. If you don't maximize your deals, if you don't run your deals hard, you're going to fail. And a lot of these social media syndicators, they do not know how to operate a deal. They don't know what it costs. They don't know how to max out an insurance. They don't know how to create a master policy for their assets for insurance. They do not know how to buy in bulk. They do not know how to drop ship. They don't know how to manage the flow of their supplies. And their budgeting, they look at a deal and they listen to the broker, and the broker tells them, oh, this is a great deal. It's a 6 cap, Brokers are full of crap. So especially commercial brokers, which what you need to do is, once you put a property under contract, you go right to the property. You do a lease audit on every lease. You make sure that rent roll's real. You do an audit on all the utilities. You bid the insurance out yourself. And then you come up with your strategic plan to increase the value, to force some appreciation. And after you've done it 1, 2, 10, 250 times, you know what you're doing. And, this business is common sense. And I keep on saying this, that common sense has become uncommon in today's society.
Yeah, no, you're extremely pragmatic, Mr. Shapiro. It's like the most pragmatic. But you're right. Some people are just theoretical, but you really do see through the corners.
It's Mark. It's Mark Vincent, by the way.
Mark. All right, Mark. Thank you for correcting me. Mark, is there a rule on how low the occupancy rate can be before purchasing? Do you ever go below 85%? And what are the best methods for minimizing vacancies and evictions with a 100+ store building?
So no, we don't have any minimum occupancy levels, because typically if we're buying a distressed asset, it's going to have some occupancy issues. So if you're familiar with the term economic occupancy versus physical occupancy, so physical occupancy is all the people that are living there. So take a 100-unit property, and it's fully occupied. There's 100 residents on the rent roll, but their physical occupancy is only 50%. That means only 50 of them are paying. So that means the other 50 are either going through the eviction process or on some type of stip or behind, and you're going to look at the deal, and that's why the prior owner failed. Because if you can't collect your income, you can't pay your debt service. And you want to have debt on these deals because you want that leverage, because that's going to lift your return. Most people don't understand how important leverage is. So that's the first part to your question. The second part to your question is any deal that you buy, you can turn it around. You just have to know how to do it. You have to understand the market. You have to understand the resident laws in that state and in that county, and you have to be very familiar with it. So before you buy it, that's why due diligence is so important. Most people never do due diligence. They look at a pro forma, they look at an OM, they see shiny pictures of a gym, they see shiny pictures of a front gate with a beautiful sign, and they're like, I'm going to own this, I'm going to put my name on it, and I'm going to be a big shot. Well, guess what? If you can't collect the rent, you're not a big shot. You're going to lose whatever you built already. So you have to be pragmatic and methodical in everything you do in the multifamily space.
No, I totally agree, Mr. Shapiro. Mark, I totally agree. How fast can you lower the expense ratio to optimal level before raising rents, or do you like to raise rents before lowering the expense ratio?
So it's done in a delicate balance. So if you're going to buy an asset that requires some tenant improvement, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to remove all the residents that are non-paying. At the same time, you're going to begin your strategic improvement to the asset to show people that you're creating a new asset. First thing you do is you rename the property. Second thing you do is you create a whole new mentality to the property. So the new name, and then you show everybody what you're doing for a reno program, and then you look at the tenant eval. So you look at what the tenant profile is, and then you move the tenant evaluation up. So let's say if people don't know this, when we look at a resident, we base them on a credit score. Credit score for apartments is not like a FICO score. Instead of it being 300 to 850, it's 30 to 85. So we use a service called Credco that will evaluate that. And if the property has a constant resident that their credit score is 45, we want to look at the first turn to move that credit score to 45. That's our base. So we want to move it from 50 to 52. So we want to do that first turn for the first 12 months. At the same time, we're improving the asset. And at the same time, we're taking the expense ratio and we're hammering it down. If the property doesn't have individual utilities, we're going to bring in a RUBS program, which is a resident unit reimbursement program. So you're billing it back to the resident. We're going to do that on water and electric. We're going to do any strategic improvement that's going to lower our cost of insurance. If we buy a deal that was foreclosed on, that deal is usually going to be less than the old owner. So we're going to bring in a firm that's going to appeal our taxes. So we're going to reduce our tax bill. So all these little things are dollars that flow right to the net operating income. At the same time, you're pushing the rents up because you're improving the asset. And those improvements are strategic, and you're lowering the expenses, so your NOI is going to increase dramatically. It's not rocket science. It's just an executed plan. And that's what you have to do. You got to do it.
Yeah, an idea is only an idea until you execute, and you've shown time over time that you know how to execute, Mark. Are there any other secrets to maximizing a high NOI and debt service coverage ratio and a lower cap rate, you think?
No, there's no magic to this. There's really no magic. The magic is going in and understanding the asset before you close, having a plan that you can execute when you hit the ground the day you close, and executing that plan and controlling those expenses. If you try to do this remotely, it doesn't work. You need somebody on site. Let's say you buy a portfolio of 750 units, and it's spread across 4 assets, and those assets are in close proximity to each other. You're going to need to have your own team, your own boots on the ground. Okay? You're going to have to control your GC. The GC is going to have to give you a fixed price contract. You're going to ask them to provide you with a payment and performance bond. You need to do all these things. Otherwise, you're going to get beat up. You're going to end up losing on this deal. Even though you bought the deal right, doesn't matter if you bought the deal right. If you can't execute on it, then you're going to fail.
Fair enough, Mark. Fair enough. And what's your preferred rate for LP investors, the A shares? Is it like 7 and 8%? What's your pref rate, would you say, at the moment?
I'd have to defer to my buddy Grant Cardone. I think he pays 6%. Okay. If we're ever an LP, we ask for 18% on our money. Yeah.
All right. It's got to be a killer deal then for the numbers to make sense.
Well, we won't buy a deal if it's not a 2x multiple on our capital. Won't look at a deal because they're all out there.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, there's opportunity out there. You just have to go out there and get it. Do you like combining properties to create non-recourse loans, or is it just you ask to be a non-recourse loan from the start?
You ask for non-recourse right from day one. Day one. You know, in the real estate business, when you start out, a lot of people, you have to personally guarantee something. As you get more sophisticated, there are ways to burn that guarantee off.
There it is. There it is.
And that's called a burn-off provision.
Thank you for clarifying that, Mark. And do you like to grandfather all concessions from prior management, or do you always negotiate a capital expenditures reserve or repair allowance when purchasing?
So we always underwrite our own replacement for reserve, a reserve for replacement. We always underwrite our own number. It's typically a little higher than what the lender will ask for, because you just never know. You really never know. And then if you have money left over, then you can create additional improvements, and then you're going to increase the value of the asset, because this is a long-term play. You want to buy the deal, you want to take that deal to another level, you want to refinance it, and then take that capital onto the next deal, and you want to keep it. You never want to sell anything. Even though I've sold my portfolio twice, you never want to sell anything.
Yeah, of course. I've heard that before. You just want to cash out and you just keep compounding your growth.
Yep.
For insurance, if the claim history looks good, do you try to inherit the current insurance option, like grandfather it in, or do you source a new insurance company every time?
So we always have a new bid, but we will try to pick up the existing broker, and we'll try to pick up that policy and then put that onto our master policy, which we do our own first loss. So we reinsure the first specific dollar amount on any of our properties. It's not a lot. It's a $500,000 first layer.
All right, there it is. And is a good deal for you, like a cap rate above 6%, cash on cash, like above 9%, and a DSCR over 1.4. Does that sound about right for you?
It's on a deal by deal basis. So we have a deal that we've been looking at, buying the mortgage on this deal in Texas, and it's a gorgeous deal. Caps north of 6, it's not a class A, it's a class AAA, and it would be a perfect condo conversion. But it's just not time for condo conversions, and until debt comes down a little bit. But it would be a perfect condo conversion.
All right, fair enough. Before I get into my real questions, I just have a real life example of 311.
These are not real questions.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, these are just things I just had to ask just for the people to understand what your mindset. And then real life example, there's a 311 doors deal in Silver Springs. What's the lowest down payment someone could get in with for knowing you? And can I bring this deal to you if you were to analyze it? It's supposedly for 75 million.
So does it have existing debt?
Most likely yes.
And how long has the owner owned it?
That I don't know, Mark. I can talk to you after the show about it if you'd like.
Yeah. So all these deals, you need to know all the particulars before you actually figure out how you want to structure it. But a lot of owners that are desperate, they'll do whatever. Okay, I always tell them, I'll give you your price, just give me my terms. But if it's a larger scale deal, you said 312 units.
311. Yep.
311. It all depends. We have to look at all the factors. So if it's a strong deal, then we're going to be able to probably leverage it up 90% with a first and some pref or some mezz.
All right. So, yes, definitely talk about that after this. Now jumping into my real questions, like everybody else. What's the most misunderstood thing about you, your work, or your industry?
Well, I think with me, I think you see what you get. I mean, you've met me in person. Okay, no. This is me.
You call it how you see it. 1,000% from the hip.
My father was a dentist, but my father was very ritual. His life was all about different rituals, and he woke at a certain time. He ate the same thing every day for breakfast. He read the sports page first. On Sunday, he did the Times crossword puzzle at like a record speed. Like that. How do you do that thing in 30 minutes? He's like, I don't know. I just do it. It's one of the things that he loves to do. He was meticulous about us making sure every day we got up and made our bed. And he would always say, well, you make your bed and you've achieved something. It's simple, but you've started a task and you've completed it for that day. And then at least if you don't have a very good day, you come home to a made bed. So he was very much like that. What's misunderstood about this business is there are a lot of people in this business that are really, really good people, because a lot of people have a misconception about real estate developers because, they can do so well because of the use of leverage. And I think people get a little envious that, somebody has that ability, but they've taken the risk. It's a calculated risk. They have gone out on a limb and they bought a deal, they bought something, and then they've executed it and they've done well. And a lot of people see that as, well, why should they be able to have this versus why can't I have it? And the answer is you can have it. You just need to educate yourself and go and try to do it.
There it is. Mark, for you yourself, like, what was the turning point in your career when your eyes opened up and you just knew you were going to conquer this? At what point did you know this real estate was yours?
So I'd been in the business, well, after I graduated college. I took a job as a commercial loan officer at a bank called Suffield Savings. Mm-hmm. And I had built up my portfolio to about 400 apartments. And at that point, I could sustain myself. And so I left the bank. And the day that I stopped going out every day to manage the properties and started to just work on deals in the office and have somebody report to me, that was when I started to grow. And I bought this property. I didn't even have enough money to close it. It was 183 units. I was $40,000 short, and I bought it, and it had some deferred maintenance, and lo and behold, I had owned it for about 90 days, and I got a letter in the mail, because that's how they did things back then, from a condo converter, and he offered me an obscene amount of money. And I actually went and met with him. I had lunch with him. I met his mother, and he was in Boston. And he made me, as I said, an obscene offer. And I asked him, I said, can I think about it? So I thought about it. I went and discussed it with my dad. And my dad said, well, if it's real, why are you hesitating? I said, I don't know. It just seems too good to be true. He said, well, call him up and tell him that you'll take the offer. And I said, well, let's at least just check from a tax standpoint how we handle this and deal with it. And my father said, that's a good idea. And so I called the fellow the next day. His name was Peter. And the only thing that I said to him was, I'll sell you my property, but I want you to teach me the condo conversion business. And I want to keep a small piece of the deal. And he said, okay, I'll teach you the business if you stay on and manage the property for me. So we stayed on and managed it. And I learned the condo conversion business from him. I learned it from another person too, down here in Florida. But I learned it on this one. And I had just turned 26, and I walked out of that deal after taxes with a little over $3 million. So that's 1986. I'm 26.
10 million in 2024.
And, I was like, is this even real? And I was making money on everything I was doing. And I brought the check back then. They didn't wire the money back then. They gave you a check from the attorney's client's fund. I took it and showed it to my father. I made a copy of it because I wanted to frame it. And my dad said, mind if I take this check? I said, no, if you need it, Dad, you can take it. I said, I'll be fine. He goes, no, I'm going to take this check, and I want to take a portion of this check, and I want to put it in trust for you, and you'll always be a millionaire. And I said, okay, that's a great idea. And he said, look, you'll have like $2 million to do whatever you want with the rest of it. It was like $3.1 million. And I said, you care if I buy myself a sports car? And, I said, I don't want to live anymore in one of the I was living in one of my basement apartments in not a great neighborhood. My father's like, no, why don't you buy a house? I said, so I bought a house, bought a boat. And then I took the rest of the money and I invested it. And I never looked back.
That's literally, you could literally write a book on this or a movie. There'd be a movie on this.
Actually, I'm actually writing a book with Robert G. Allen,
right?
The father of Nothing Down. Yeah.
Congrats. I hope it's a bestseller. And that's insane. Like, it's a full circle moment. You found two mentors that taught you how to do it, and now you're giving basically mentorship or apprenticeships to up and coming investors.
It's funny, today I got a video from one of the first students in Shapiro Capital, because this is all brand new. And she joined Shapiro Capital on, I want to say, the third week of June. She closed her deal on Thursday, and she sent me pictures. She sent me a video of her doing demo today. And she's so excited. She's unbelievable. Her name is Lydia. And she made a really big mistake. Her big mistake was that when she did her performa, which she bought a house in St. Louis, Missouri for $34,000, by the way. She used the 2023 Section 8 rent versus the 2024 So she called me the other day and she said, I made a mistake. I have $3,600 more in NOI. Now I know it's not a lot when you're doing $100 to $200 to $300 million deal, but to her, it's her first deal. Okay.
Uh-huh.
So she goes from her value at 150 to her new value is at around 2.25, and she's all in with her closing costs and her rehab at 70. So out of the bucket, okay, out of the gate, she's going to do minimum 100, maybe 100 and 120, right out of the bucket. And the cash flow on this deal is $1,100 a month.
It's a home run hit for her.
Crazy. So then, because she did it with her boyfriend, they actually did have the money. Instead of doing financing, they're going to do, when it's stabilized, they're going to do a HELOC, first mortgage on it. And they're going to use that and buy 2 more deals, which they've already found 2 more deals.
Wow, it's so funny. It's like it's an adrenaline rush. They do it for the thrill, just like you now. Once you get hooked, you get hooked. What's another big misconception people have about commercial real estate in today's world, would you say?
This is a great conception. So the skyline of Miami is behind me.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at every one of those buildings, there's a developer on it. It's not their money. It's other people's money. The smartest developer never uses his own money. It's always somebody else's money, whether it's a fund, an insurance company, an endowment, a private equity fund, a hedge fund, or a family office, or just a group of investors, or a public deal like Grant Cardone does. Okay? It's somebody else's money. And the developer, he gets his 20, 30, 40%. On new construction, they do a little bit better. There are developers that do use their own money. You know, in Florida and Miami, we have some of the greatest developers in the world here. So, you know, you have the revolutionary guy, George Perez, okay, who his company is related. His partner was Steve Ross, who owns the Dolphins. And he's one of the biggest developers in the world. He is the one that did Hudson Yard. He's unbelievable. I mean, these developers they're the Barry Bonds, or let me rephrase that. They're the Ken Griffey of real estate development. Then you have the guys like the Gelbit family, Russell Gelbit. People don't really know him, but he's one of the biggest developers in the country. Or David Martin, who's is Pedro Martin's son, or the guys from PMG. They're all these guys that are super duper unbelievable, amazing developers. I think the nicest building downtown is Paramount. I believe it's one of the Kotze's did it. I think it's Dan Kotze. I may be wrong. But some of these incredible buildings, even my old friend Louis Birdman, he did the Hadid Tower, gorgeous building. That's Hadid's father. He's an architect. Those 2 models, Bella and
Bella and yeah.
The father's an architect. There's so many building goings up. You can't even keep track of it. And since I started with social media, I don't even know whether I'm coming or going because I'm so busy doing my very best to make a difference in someone's life like Lydia Walker, which for me gives me that true meaning because I didn't realize I could actually teach, and I didn't know that teaching was actually my passion. And what it's done is it's made me look at myself differently, and learning to teach taught me real empathy because you know, when you do well and you make a lot of money and, you know, you become pretty unempathetic. You know, you don't really realize that everybody's just trying to get through each day. Everybody just wants someone to to be there with him. Everybody wants to be loved. This is really simple, basic stuff. Everybody wants someone to smile at them, hold the door for them, just show them genuine kindness. And I really learned to be, as I started to teach, and I've been teaching a long time, probably teaching this very simple, basic ideas for maybe at least a decade. Very select people. And it made me realize I was blessed. I had an amazing father, amazing mother. I had amazing friends growing up that I'm still friends with to this day. I have a friend that I've been friends with since we were 8. And I actually went to the car show this past Sunday.
Uh-huh.
And I was a little disappointed in the car show, but there was the first car that I ever bought, which was a Chevelle SS 396, great car. And I was telling Gabriella, I'm like, when I bought this car, I was 16, so it was 1976. I paid $1,350 for this car. And she's like, well, what would it cost today? I said, well, go ask the guy standing right there. $350,000. That classic muscle car. So, we just don't understand enough, and we just don't do enough to one another to try to make a difference. And that's really kind of what I'm trying to do.
No, you truly are. You're literally uplifting people. You have a giver's gain mentality. You're helping the trajectories of human beings, I would say. What's the most courageous thing? What's the most courageous decision you've made recently, and how did it impact you?
Most courageous thing was probably the dumbest thing I ever did. Was just a long time ago. I was getting diapers for when my daughter was young, and I went to not a great section of town, and I did have my pistol on me, and somebody was carjacking someone, and I tried to intercede. And when I unholstered my gun and I took the safety off, I knew I had to put it back in the car, and I went. And I got beat up pretty bad. I got stabbed. I got beat up. I did stop the woman from getting carjacked and hurt. But it's funny because I never there was never a police report. I never did anything. I got myself cleaned up and mended up. And, I realized that was the dumbest thing I think I ever did.
Shapiro.
Aside from probably over leveraging a deal, that's even the worst thing that you could ever do. Because trust me, it doesn't work.
Mr. Shapiro, and Mark, that was one of the craziest stories ever. You could literally write a book on yourself or a movie on yourself. The fact that thank you for being vulnerable with me. If you could change one thing about the industry, what would it be and why?
That's a good question. That's actually a great question because, when you're in the residential space, you typically stay away from states that, I hate to say this, that are blue because they have laws that are in favor of the resident. I'd love for there to be a national reform on the policy of eviction, because if people just realized that the owner of the building is trying to better their life and better their family. At the same time, if you take away the people that don't know how to operate and that operate in a less than ethical fashion and push everybody into operating ethically, then you could create a win-win for the resident. You could create a win-win for the landlord. And, you could create a more positive environment because people are like, oh, that landlord evicted me. He's a scumbag. He did this, this, and this. Well, there are good in every industry and there is bad in every industry. So, it's like, I will tell you, I know I've referred to him a few times. Grant, he does a really good job running his deals. Now, he doesn't run them. He has third-party management. But, but people like to take shots at him. I mean, I take a shot at him when he says stupid shit. Absolutely. But overall, he's a pretty good guy.
No, I'm sure he is. I'm sure everyone's a knucklehead sometimes. What's the next big thing we should expect in the commercial real estate space, and how are you contributing to it?
So the next big thing for me is I believe everybody should own a piece of real estate. I believe everybody should own multiple pieces of real estate. And what I want to do is revolutionize the single family rental market using Section 8. But at the same time, I want to take another concept and layer it. It's called rent to own. So taking the resident that is struggling, that has a Section 8 voucher, but they have good credit, they just don't have the ability to come up with that down payment, create a rent-to-own program where they pay their rent for 60 months, and at the end of 60 months, if they have paid their rent on time, the existing owner will sell them the property at 90% of the appraised value that day, and let them take that 10% and qualify for a mortgage. So during that 60 months, you're helping them build their credit up, going through a process, and at the same time, they're taking care of the asset, and the asset's appreciating. So the landlord may make less money by selling it at a small discount, but it's taken away the aggravation of owning the asset. And you're lifting up the resident, who ends up being a buyer, and then the person who is the actual property owner. And they know at some point they have an exit, and they know at some point they're helping another person. And that person is looking forward to, what's the possibilities. Some people like to dream, and they want to create, manifest things. Okay. Mm-hmm. I believe that you create your manifest, your destiny, by writing it down. If you think about it, but you don't write it down, it's not real. Once you write it down, then create a book of possibilities, of all the possibilities that you could achieve in your life, and put them down. And then every day look at them, whether it's 1 or 2 or 5 times. I know all these sales trainers, like the great Daniel G. or Jordan Belfer, or all these guys, they tell you to manifest something. So you want to have that fancy car, put the picture of that fancy car in your office. You want to have that big house, do that. Or you want to work for your family and you want to put them through college, put that up there. Okay. And you're going to look at it over and over and over again. And that's going to motivate you to do one more sale, one more call, one more of anything makes you more successful versus doing less.
Yeah. When you do that, you're just setting a high standard for yourself. But what you just told me, you're really giving hope to those voucher 8 people, and you're creating a win-win situation for everybody. So I really like the concept you have going for yourself. Mark, you don't have to answer this, but how do you handle criticism or negative feedback about your work if it's ever occurred?
You take it head on. If it's constructive criticism, okay. You got to work for it. Okay. I can be a little too. I can be a little too caustic. I can be a little too frank. Sometimes I'm reminded that you don't have to say that. And I guess at 64, I stopped having a filter a long time ago. But you know what? It's better off to not hurt someone's feelings and maybe take them aside. And I just recently, I'm working with someone. He's an amazing young man, and I sent him some constructive criticism in a group text, and he said, "Well, you could have texted me privately." And I said, "You're right. I'm sorry." So, you still learn. You're still learning every day.
Yeah, ain't that the truth? Yeah, you're still a sponge though. The fact that you still have the self-awareness about that, it truly shows that you're a student of the game, even though you're probably one of the most successful to ever do it. What's the story behind your most memorable success or failure? Do you have another story by chance?
think my most successful, maybe it was the largest transaction I ever did. We bought a portfolio of about 6,000 apartments. They were spread out over the state of Texas, and it was 16 different assets. And 2 weeks before the closing, the seller had a stroke.
No.
2 weeks before the closing, he had a stroke. So we fired up the jet, and I flew out to where he was and went to the hospital. And for the first day, he didn't really know that I was there. And he did recover. I mean, he had some issues speaking, but the second day I came back to visit him. His wife was there, and she said, "You have no idea what this means to my husband." And he started to recover, and 2 weeks later, I bought the portfolio. Yeah.
You executed. Congrats. Bring out the champagne and confetti. You really, you know how to close a deal, Mark. You really know how to close a deal. Switching gears a little bit. If you could have dinner with any historical figure, who would it be and why?
If I could have dinner with any circle or
Anybody, and dead or alive.
You know, if it was somebody that's passed on, I would say Winston Churchill, because he was, fallible human being, and he didn't hide his flaws, but he was incredibly brilliant. Um, and someone who's alive. I've actually never had anything to eat with him, but I'd love to have dinner with DJT.
Who's DJT?
Donald. The Donald.
Oh, 45 and 47. That's hilarious. No, he's
Donald.
a funny guy. He's a funny guy. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Yep.
No, those are great choices. Those are great choices, Mark, I would say. And then who or what inspires or influences you the most in your work, would you say, in today?
Who inspired me?
Yeah, who inspires or influences you the most in your work? Mm-hmm.
I will tell you, my father was a very big inspiration to me. He was his philosophy was always just do the right thing. Always do your best. Always try to help another person. And my mother was the same way. And back in the olden days, people were different. Back in the olden days when, somebody lost their job, the neighbors would lift them up. They would bring them groceries. Somebody passed away, they would make them dinner. They just being genuinely kind to another person, and just telling that person how grateful they are, whether it's the guy that parks your car or details your car, or where you get your dry cleaning done, or the person that serves you coffee. Just really looking them straight in the eyes and tell them, I really appreciate this. Thank you. We just need to do that a little bit more. So
Now you're a great Samaritan. You're a gentleman and a scholar, I would say. What's the biggest lesson you've learned in your career so far?
That's a simple one. Make sure you properly capitalize all of your deals. Your capital stack is the most important thing that you can do. Because if you're undercapitalized, you will fail.
Yeah, everyone take calculated risk and make sure you double check or triple check before you move forward. All right, Mark. What's your advice for someone starting out in the industry in today's world? What's the best advice for them to find a deal the fastest way possible? You think?
The fastest way possible is to actually not be in a race. You're not racing against anybody but yourself.
Thank you.
And you need to be able to, each time you have a success, you need to be able to sit back and savor it a little bit. And remember, you're not, there's no competition. It's you against you. And if you don't get into the game and if you don't start, you're never going to achieve it. And I love that, your grandpa Harry said, or your uncle Harry said, I could have bought that building for $4 in 1927. Well, guess what? You didn't buy it. And today it would be worth $4 billion. I mean, I'm just making it crazy.
Yeah, of course.
So, and it's funny because we did a video and my editor got it wrong. Okay. It actually was posted yesterday. We did a video of this guy that had a leg mason jacket on. Mm-hmm. And the guy's a stock jockey. So he said that in 1970, if you took $24,000 and bought a property, the property would appreciate at a 5.4 rate, and it would be worth $420,000 in 54 years. And he said if you took that same $24,000 and invested in the S&P, it would be worth $4 million. So I took everything he said for face value. And then I just made one slight little change. I said, if you took that $24,000 and you bought yourself a 10-unit apartment building and you applied the simple principle of doubling, which things double every decade, every 10 years, that 20 units would become, that 10 unit would become 20 units, first doubling. The second would be 40. The third would be 80. The fourth would be 160. And the fifth doubling, which is 50 years, would be 320 units. 320 unit Class A apartment building would be worth $96 million with no debt on it. So we're going to post a part 2 because I really want, because this guy, he actually, if you look at the video, he was making fun of people because he's like trying to talk like he has some kind of speech impediment. And he goes, well, I bought a property and I don't even know why he was making fun of real estate investors. Okay. And everybody needs a good financial advisor. Everybody needs somebody that can help them plan. Everybody needs proper insurance advice. Everybody needs advice on everything because that's why there are attorneys, CPAs, engineers, accountants. That's why these people are out there, okay? They're there to help make your life easier and better. And they all should be paid well for what they do. But when you belittle somebody and you're wrong about it, then that's when I'm going to go after you, okay? So, and I went after somebody. They called me and they said, why are you doing this? You're wrong. I said, I'm not wrong. And I tried to call the person back, left him a message. He hasn't called me back. They're taking money from people. They're ripping people off, charging these people for these courses. In my course, we teach the Section 8. It takes about, I think it's 30 minutes to learn Section 8. I can teach it to you in 10. Okay. It's not super sophisticated. And, it's just a free add-on. Our latest content was how to take a 30-year mortgage and turn it into 7.5. Okay.
It's a neat concept.
Yeah. It's not it's an actual reality by just making 2 additional principal payments a month. That's it. And everybody gets it wrong. They think principal, we're paying down a lot of principal. You're paying interest on everything.
Ain't that the truth, Mark? Ain't that the truth? No, but you are a genius at this game, I would say. What do you think is the key to maintaining a work-life balance, and how do you apply it in your life?
Well, I always was not very good at that. Not very good at that. And the business can really push you because when you start to do really well, it becomes intoxicating. You have to remember, don't become a deal junkie. Make sure your deal is balanced, because deals are either balanced or unbalanced. That's it. It's all numbers. Okay. Then you need to determine what you want out of your life, and you need to find out what that balance is. So you need to know what your work balance is with your personal life balance, and then you need to work them together. And if you're lucky enough to have somebody incredible in your life, then you're blessed.
No, you truly are winning. Yeah, when you have your soulmate, you love what you do and you love who you work with. Like, what more can you ask for? Um,
True.
and Mark, what's the most challenging aspect of being in your role in today's world? Would you say?
Putting capital to use in the right deal. You've got to be. There's so much capital on the sideline because there's so many crappy deals out there, and you've got to be able to find the asset and create the highest and best use for whatever you're doing. And you just need to apply the simple principles of this is what you need to do. Because the simple principle of, if you understand real estate and you know what the asset is and you know what the market is, then you're going to know how to take the asset from here to here. Okay? There's no in between. It's that simple. Understand your deal. Make sure it's financed properly. Make sure you have the capital executed. Make sure you have a plan. It's methodical and organized, and then go execute it. Everybody says the secret to real estate is location, location, location. No, it's not. It's execution, execution, execution. Okay? If Lydia Walker can buy a property in St. Louis, Missouri for $34,000, execute it, invest $35,000 into it with her closing costs and her reserves, so she's in at 70, and have a finished value of $200K in 30 days, then I'd say it's that simple. Don't get so hung up on it being so hard. I can't do this. I can't do this. Nobody's helping me. Well, help yourself. Get off the sideline, get off your ass, and help yourself. Go out and find somebody that's going to help you. There's lots of guys that are out there doing this. There's lots of guys that are good at doing this. There's lots of guys that are going to hold your hand. So, besides me.
Yeah, I know, but Mark, you play at the most elite level. You're like a maverick. You really light years ahead of most people. The fact that you said execute, 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 I ate that up. And then, what's your favorite book, podcast, or article that's had a significant impact on your life or work?
So there's as far as for real estate, Robert G. Allen's book, Nothing Down. My mother gave it to me when I was going into my junior year, which is what prompted me to buy my first property. But I come from a real estate background. But there's a book that was written by an author. I believe he was a sports writer from you can see him on ESPN. I think his name is Mitch Albom, and he wrote a book called Tuesdays with Morrie.
Mm-hmm.
And it was about his college professor. And the book is it's a simple book. It's maybe 90, 100 pages. It's about love. It's about relationships. It's about, the people that we sometimes become that we don't like. It's about change, and it's about death. And it's an incredible book. If you want something a little deeper, then read As a Man Thinketh by James Allen, another great book. So, or you want to get esoteric, read The Prince by was it Machiavelli or Nietzsche? It's one of the two.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, there's so many great books to read. Today, I mean, Carol Sandburg, her book Leaning In. Everybody's like level up. That's what leveling up is. Get in there and do some shit. Okay. I mean, this is all practical stuff.
Nah, man, the fact that you're still though the fact that you're one of the most successful people to ever do it, and you're still constantly learning, like it just shows that like, you never stop learning. Always be a student of the game, and like have you ever been driving or like on your phone or watching TV like if I wasn't in real estate, I would want to be doing this instead. Or has it just always been real estate for you? Is there one thing? If there's another career that maybe you could have choose, what would it have been? Just teaching or public speaking, maybe?
Um, no, I mean I've invested in all kinds of crazy companies. Uh, I mean tech, restaurants. I ate really well in the restaurants I invested in. I actually did get my money out on them.
Nice.
I invested in a company called the Unholy Bagel. So it was a bagel with no hole in it. And I still today don't know what happened to that investment. I don't want to say the guy's last name. His name was Larry. He was outside of Boston. They actually were in Costco. It was a bagel with cream cheese in it. I think they were at the Circle K stores, but I never got my money back on that one. But I think the funnest investment that I ever made was we invested in a go-kart track, and I did make money, and I did get to take my kids to use the go-kart a lot. So I couldn't ever tell my wife. I think the worst investment I didn't invest in, I thank my ex-father-in-law for this. We were going to be the first investor in a place called Boston Chicken, and it's now today Boston Market. And then another one, his daughter, my ex-wife, talked me out of, was a company that was doing healthy macaroni and cheese called Annie's Mac and Cheese, and they became a huge company. And I remember I brought the macaroni and cheese home, and she said, it's terrible. And I'm like, well, it's healthy. And if you go anywhere you go, you see them. So, but that's just life.
Yeah.
So.
Hey, your gut though, I feel like you're right. Like your gut is really strong. Like when you listen to your gut, more times than not, you are correct.
Oh, you got to listen to your instincts. Absolutely.
Yeah. The fact that like it just sounds like it. And what's one piece of advice you wish you had received early in your career?
Don't take those relationships for granted. Nurture them, foster them. And when you're wrong, you apologize to somebody. You look them in the eyes and you tell them you're wrong, and you own up to it.
A great piece of advice.
Yep.
Mark, what's your take on the future of the industry, and what are your goals for the next 5 to 10 years?
So my take on the future of the industry is it's going to continue to evolve. It's going to be obviously changed by AI. It's going to also be changed by the tech space. I think we're going to see a lot more in the way of shared housing or repurposing commercial buildings because of the COVID issue. I've never done a deal like that. I don't plan on doing it. I'm just a standard apartment guy. I don't like to get out of the box too much, but I think the industry is going to continue to evolve. I think you're going to see more people renting. I think you're going to see the younger generation does not want to own, and they want to be able to live somewhere and then move to a new place and then move to a new place. So you're going to continue to see that evolution.
Yeah, I'm sure it's gonna be like the fact that it's just a cycle, and the fact that you see it, like you're gonna know, Mark. You're gonna know exactly the fact that you know where you are in the cycle. Like it just shows like you're a master of the game. I got two more questions for you. The first one being, when I'm really old, I'm actually gonna rewatch this. So, what's one piece of advice you want to leave with me, like a priceless piece of advice?
A priceless piece of advice. Are you married?
Not yet.
So when you meet that person that you truly fall in love with,
Mm-hmm.
make sure you tell them over and over again. If you haven't told your parents today that you love them, tell them if they're still around over and over again. Your siblings, same thing. Okay.
Thank you, Mark. That I take that to heart and to the soul. That's thank you for that piece of advice. And then my last and final question: what legacy do you hope to leave behind through your work when it's all said and done?
I think the fact that if I can change, so a very good friend of mine
Mm-hmm.
happens to be one of these hyper successful guys worth several $billions. And I mentioned to him that he inspires me to change people's lives. And he told me that he made a decision years back when he became a billionaire that if he could change 10 people's lives in in the world. And I actually I'll read this to you because he actually sent me and I saved this. He said, my goal in life was to profoundly change 10 people's lives for the better. You're my partner in making that multiply. So, and that is, what's hit home with me. If I can change the life of 10 people, if I can change the life of one person for the better, then it's made my life worthwhile.
Mark, that's truly touching. Like that gave me goosebumps. And I'm not gonna lie to you. Like when I was like 10 years ago, like I had this old man like drop gems on me. And he was like, a billion's not much when you're talking trillions. And like it took me like 6 to 7 years later to realize like 1% of a trillion is 10 billion. So if you're talking anything under 10 billion, happiness is the only thing that matters. And after talking to you, I realized like hope being a good human, like iron sharpens iron, but helping humans, like that's more important in life than money, I feel like. And it was a true honor and pleasure speaking to you today, Mark. Do you have any other questions, comments, or thoughts for me by chance?
Vincent, you have my email address?
No, I do not actually. I can ask Adrian for it.
Okay, send me that deal.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
Because we just lost 2 deals in Texas.
All right. I can do that for you.
Yeah.
All right. And yeah. And then anything else on your mind, Mark?
No, I'm very blessed. This was truly amazing, and meeting you in person was truly amazing. And I hope I was helpful and inspirational.
1,000%, Mark. 1,000%. Ladies and gentlemen, you literally heard from a king investor from the state of Florida who invests all nationwide. Join his school program. Follow him on Instagram. Reach out to him. He is literally a kind soul. Mark, you're the man. Can you stay online for 1 or 2 more minutes, please, while I end this?
Yep.
Thank you.